The twin suns of Valora Prime were setting when a massive shadow fell over the Crystal Palace. The sound of engines roared like thunder, and the guards looked up in shock. No one expected it. The alien queen had returned. Her golden ship landed slowly on the royal platform, glowing like molten fire. For 2 months, the queen had been away, fighting a border war and settling disputes among the outer colonies. The palace had grown quiet in her absence, but her sudden arrival brought chaos. Every servant, soldier, and attendant ran to their stations. The palace lights came alive. Music started, and the scent of burning flowers filled the air. The queen stepped down, her tall crown shimmering with blue light. Her expression was calm, but her eyes, sharp as knives, looked ready to cut through lies. "Where is the council?" she demanded. The guards bowed deeply, trembling. "In the main hall, Your Majesty." But even as she walked through the grand corridors, something strange caught her attention. The lower wings of the palace, the janitor's sector, were still dim and silent. The rest of the palace had come alive, but those halls remained dark. Her tail flicked once, a sign of irritation. "Who dares work during my arrival ceremony?" she said softly, her voice echoing. No one answered. So the queen decided to check herself. Her footsteps echoed as she descended into the lower levels. Dust floated in the air, and the scent of cleaning oil replaced the sweet perfume of the upper palace. She passed old machines, broken glass, and unused furniture. The deeper she went, the more silent it became. Then faintly she heard a sound, a soft humming, almost human. She stopped near a half-open door. Through the gap, she saw something that made her narrow her eyes. Inside the maintenance room, a human man, wearing a simple gray janitor uniform, was on his knees. He was cleaning a broken alien toy, one of those made for the Queen's child before the war. His hands were gentle, almost careful, as if the toy were alive. He spoke softly to himself. "Almost done, little one. Just need to fix your arm." The Queen froze. No servant, not even her highest maid, dared touch anything that once belonged to the royal family. It was sacred, forbidden. Yet this human, a janitor, was doing it openly. Her heart began to beat faster, not in anger, but in confusion. Humans were known as cold, selfish, and ambitious. That was what every alien world believed. But the man's eyes told another story. There was no greed there, no fear, only kindness and sadness. She stayed hidden for a while, watching him. He finished cleaning the toy, then placed it gently on a shelf filled with other repaired objects. Small alien dolls, books, even a broken music box that now played a faint tune. The Queen realized that he had been collecting discarded royal items and fixing them in secret. "Why?" she whispered under her breath. The man stood up, stretched, and smiled faintly to himself. "Maybe one day, the palace will remember these things," he said softly, almost to the air. "Even broken things deserve another chance." The Queen felt something shift inside her. Those words hit her harder than any weapon. For years she had ruled with fear and order, believing that weakness must be erased. But here was a human, a species once enslaved by her empire, saving what her own people threw away. Her claws pressed against the metal wall. She could have walked in and punished him. She could have ended his life with one command, but instead she stood frozen, silent, and strangely curious. Finally, she stepped closer to the door, pushing it open a little more. The light spilled onto her face. The janitor turned, startled. His eyes widened when he saw her, his skin pale as the moon's. The mop fell from his hands with a soft clatter. "Your Majesty," he stammered, bowing so fast he almost fell. The Queen said nothing. She only looked at the shelf behind him, filled with the forgotten pieces of her palace's past. Then her gaze returned to him. Her voice was calm, almost cold. "What are you doing?" The human swallowed hard, trembling. "Cleaning, Your Majesty." "Cleaning forbidden items?" she asked slowly. He hesitated. "They were broken. I thought maybe what?" "Maybe someone would miss them," he said quietly. "So I fixed them." For a long moment there was silence. The hum of the old machines filled the air. The Queen looked at him, truly looked, and something changed in her eyes. She turned without another word and walked out, leaving the human standing in confusion. But inside her mind, questions began to swirl. Why did he do that? What kind of heart could see value in what her people had forgotten? As she climbed the stairs back to her throne, the Queen's pulse was heavy. She had returned to her empire to rule with strength. Yet the first thing she saw shattered everything she believed. And for the first time in years, the mighty alien queen could not stop thinking about a simple human janitor. The next morning, the great crystal palace was awake long before sunrise. Servants whispered in fear, unsure why the queen had visited the lower levels at night. No one dared to ask her what she had seen. But the queen's mood was strange. She wasn't angry. She was quiet, distant, and lost in thought. As the royal breakfast began, her advisors talked endlessly about politics, trade routes, and alliances. But the queen heard none of it. Her mind kept returning to that single image, the human janitor kneeling before a broken toy, speaking softly as if it were alive. After the meeting ended, she ordered, "Leave me, all of you." When the room was empty, she stood by the window, watching the city far below. The sight of her empire should have filled her with pride, but all she felt was emptiness. For the first time, she wondered how her people truly lived beneath all this perfection. Hours later, she quietly left her chambers again, without guards or attendants. She wore a simple robe instead of her golden armor. Her steps took her back toward the lower halls to the place where the human worked. The sound of soft humming returned. She stopped by the doorway, this time not hiding. The janitor was there again, sitting on the floor, surrounded by small alien children. They were orphans, some missing arms or tails, others with tired eyes. They sat in a circle around him, listening as he fixed a small broken robot. "See this?" the man said gently, holding the toy. "You don't need to throw something away just because it's cracked. You just need patience and a little care." The children nodded, their eyes wide with trust. The queen leaned against the doorway, frozen once again. Not out of shock this time, but from something else. Something that almost felt like guilt. When the human saw her, his face turned pale. He stood up at once, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice shaking. The children hurried to their feet too, frightened. The queen raised a hand. "Stay," she said calmly. "I won't harm you." The children slowly sat again, their small bodies trembling. The queen looked at the man. "Explain," she ordered softly. "What is this?" The janitor took a deep breath. "They have nowhere else to go," he said. "Their families were lost during the border raids. I couldn't leave them on the streets." The queen frowned. "So you brought them here?" "To the palace?" He nodded. "It's warm here and there's food from the waste storage. I clean the halls and in return we stay hidden. They don't disturb anyone." The queen looked around. There were small makeshift beds made from old curtains, pieces of metal turned into toys, and painted walls that once were gray. The place felt alive in a quiet, fragile way. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked coldly. "This is against every law of the royal palace." "I know," he said, meeting her eyes. "But laws don't mean much to a hungry child." The queen didn't reply. His words struck deeper than he could imagine. She looked at one small alien girl with green scales and big eyes. The child hid behind the man clutching his leg. "What's your name?" the queen asked gently. "Leary," the girl whispered. "And who told you to come here?" The child looked at the janitor and said, "He did. He said the palace is too big for one queen and too empty for children to sleep outside." For a moment, the queen forgot to breathe. The human said nothing, waiting for her judgment. Finally, she turned toward him and asked, "Why would you help them?" "They are not your kind," he smiled faintly. "Because someone should." Silence filled the room again. The queen's eyes softened for a second before she quickly looked away. "You risked your life for them," she said quietly. "They're just kids," he replied. "No one should suffer because of what adults did in war." The queen's throat tightened. Memories of the war flashed in her mind. Battles, loss, burning cities. She had justified everything as necessary for victory, but seeing these children reminded her of the cost her empire never spoke about. She took one slow step forward. The children watched her wide-eyed. Then, unexpectedly, she bent down and picked up the small broken robot the man had been fixing. "You missed a wire," she murmured. The janitor looked at her in surprise. "Yes, I haven't found a spare yet." The queen studied the toy in her hands. "Find one," she said, then turned toward the door. "And keep them out of sight. The council must not know for now." The human's eyes widened. "You're letting us stay?" "For now," she repeated without turning around. "But if anyone finds out, I'll deny this conversation ever happened." And with that, she left the room, her robe sweeping behind her. But as she climbed the stairs back to the upper palace, something inside her heart began to change. For the first time, the queen wondered if strength truly came from fear, or from compassion. That night, as she lay awake in her vast, empty chamber, the queen could still hear the faint laughter of alien children in the halls below, and it made her chest ache in a way she could not explain. The next sunrise over Valora Prime painted the palace towers gold, but inside the queen's heart a quiet storm had begun. Sleep had not come to her that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the human janitor's tired face, those little alien children huddled around him, and his simple words, "because someone should." For the first time in years, she questioned her own laws. Why had she allowed such rules that punished kindness? But she was the queen. Her image was built on power, not mercy. Showing softness could tear apart her rule. Still, she could not stay away. When most of the palace still slept, she walked again toward the lower chambers, her steps silent as whispers. The same old corridors greeted her, dusty walls, the hum of old machines, and faint laughter of children trying to keep quiet. This time she didn't hide. The human janitor looked up the moment she entered. His hands froze mid-motion as he was helping a small boy fix a metallic toy car. He quickly stood up and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice tense. "Stand," she said firmly, her tone softer than before. He hesitated, then slowly straightened. The children moved back, watching carefully. The queen's sharp eyes swept across the room. She saw order in the chaos. Beds neatly arranged, food stored carefully, every corner clean. It was poor but peaceful. "You have turned a storage room into a home," she said, half amused, half confused. The man nodded. "We do what we can." Her tail flicked slightly, a sign of thought.
"You are brave."
"Or foolish," she said. "You know the punishment for sheltering orphans in the royal palace could be death." He didn't flinch. "I do. Then why continue?" she asked, her voice low. "Why not run before I find you?" He smiled faintly. "Because if I run, they'll die," the queen's breath caught. His words carried no anger, no rebellion, only truth. That calm honesty disarmed her more than any weapon could. "You speak as if your life has no worth," she said coldly, trying to hide the strange pull in her chest. "My life?" he repeated softly. "It's not about me, Your Majesty. It's about doing one small good thing before I'm gone." The queen turned away, unable to meet his eyes. "Humans," she muttered. "Always dramatic," he gave a quiet laugh. "Maybe, but sometimes drama is the only thing that keeps hope alive." Her head tilted. That was not the kind of answer she expected. "Hope?" she repeated. "That's a weak thing to rely on." He looked down at the children playing behind her. "Tell them that and see if they agree." The queen glanced over her shoulder. The little ones were laughing as they tried to make the toy car move. It clattered weakly, but they cheered anyway. Something in her chest softened, just for a heartbeat. "Your name," she said suddenly. "What is it?" "Eli," he replied. "Eli Hart?" "Eli," she said slowly, as if tasting the sound. "You do not belong here. Your kind lost the war. You should hate me, not serve me." "I don't hate anyone," Eli said quietly. "Hate's too heavy to carry. I just clean floors. And if I can help someone while doing it, I will." The queen studied him for a long time. "You could have asked for permission," she said finally. He gave a small shrug. "Would you have said yes?" Her lips twitched. "No." "Then there's your answer," he said simply. The silence between them stretched, thick but not hostile. The queen walked closer, her golden robe brushing the dusty floor. She stopped just a few steps away from him. Her gaze was sharp, but her tone had lost its edge. "You risked everything for these children. You disobeyed my laws. And yet I cannot bring myself to punish you," she said. Eli looked surprised. "Why not?" "Because I don't understand you," she admitted quietly. "You confuse me, human," he smiled softly. "Maybe that's a good thing." "Confusion means something's changing." The queen's eyes flashed with something unreadable. Anger, maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper. "Be careful what you wish for," she said. "Change can destroy worlds." "Sometimes," Eli replied, "it saves them." For a moment, they stood facing each other, the ruler of an empire and the lowest worker in her palace. Their worlds divided by power but connected by something unseen. Then a small voice broke the silence. "Your Majesty?" It was the little girl, Leary, holding the repaired robot. "It works now," she said shyly, pressing a button. The toy lit up and played a soft melody. The queen looked down at it, then at Eli. You fixed it, she said softly. He nodded. Together. Her eyes lingered on him a moment longer before she turned to leave. Keep them safe, she said over her shoulder. If anyone finds out, I'll deny everything. Yes, Your Majesty, Eli replied, but as she walked away, her thoughts refused to quiet. For the first time, the Queen felt unsure, not about her rule, but about her heart. That night, the Queen sat alone in her vast chamber, surrounded by silence. The stars outside her window shimmered across the glass towers of Valora Prime, reflecting the cold perfection of her empire. Yet inside her heart, something warm and unfamiliar had begun to stir, something she could not explain. Her advisors thought she was planning the next military campaign. The guards believed she was deep in meditation, but in truth, the Queen was remembering the human janitor's words. Sometimes change saves worlds. They echoed inside her head like a melody she couldn't silence. She rose from her throne and walked to the holographic archives. With a flick of her hand, screens lit up, showing detailed reports about every human who had been brought into service after the war. Their files were numbered, not named, just data. Yet when she searched Eli Hart, something unexpected happened. His file was classified. Classified by who? She murmured, frowning. Even she, the Queen, could not access it without overriding the system's deepest security code. Her curiosity burned brighter. After entering her personal seal, the screen opened with a soft chime, and what she saw made her breath catch. Eli Hart, former engineer, Earth's Frontier Defense Corps, convicted of refusing extermination orders during the final human war. Sentence, life servitude under the Valoran Empire. The Queen stared at the words. He had refused extermination orders? That meant during the final invasion, when most humans fought bitterly and blindly, this man had chosen not to kill. He had been punished for mercy. Her claws tightened around the edge of the console. No wonder his eyes carried both sorrow and strength. He had lost everything, yet he had not turned bitter. A man who once built machines of war now cleaned alien floors and fixed broken toys for children not his own. The Queen sat back, silent, shaken. Her empire had painted humans as savages, ruthless, dangerous, unworthy of trust. Yet Eli's actions told a different story. A quiet knock at her door broke her thoughts. Enter, she said. Her chief advisor, Lord Vathar, stepped inside, his long silver robes brushing the floor. Your Majesty, there are rumors spreading among the guards, he said carefully. They say you've been visiting the lower halls. Is it true? The Queen's eyes narrowed. And if it is? Vathar bowed slightly. It is beneath your status, my Queen. The janitorial sectors are unclean. You must not be seen mingling with humans. She studied him for a long moment. Tell me, Lord Vathar, she said softly. Do you think a human's worth is measured by what they clean, or by what they protect? Vathar hesitated. I do not understand, Majesty. Of course you don't, she said coldly. That is why you serve me. He bowed again and quickly left. But as the door closed, the Queen knew the whispers would spread. It was only a matter of time before others questioned her interest in the human janitor. Later that night, she went again to the lower halls, quietly, under the cover of darkness. She found Eli fixing the light panels, humming to himself while the children slept. When he saw her, he almost dropped his tool. Your Majesty, you shouldn't be here, he said softly. I go where I please, she replied. Her gaze fell on the sleeping children. They trust you. They trust anyone who gives them food and safety, he said simply. She walked closer, the faint glow from the panels painting her golden face in gentle light. I looked at your records, she said. Eli froze. You did? You refused to follow your commander's orders. You spared alien civilians when you could have destroyed them, and for that your own people sentenced you to life as a servant. He sighed quietly. War turns everyone into monsters. I just didn't want to become one. Her eyes softened, a rare thing for a queen who once commanded entire fleets. And now you clean the floors of your enemy's palace, she said, almost in disbelief. Eli smiled faintly. It's peaceful here. I've seen enough of blood. I'd rather fix something broken, even if it's just a toy or a light bulb. The Queen looked at him for a long time. You're either the bravest man I've ever met, or the most foolish. Maybe both, he said with a grin. She almost smiled back. Almost. But then her expression turned serious. You must be careful. My council suspects something. If they find out about the children, they will use them against you. Eli nodded. I'll keep them hidden. I always do. The queen's tail swayed slowly, a sign of hesitation. Eli, she said quietly, you changed something in me. I don't know if it's good or dangerous. He looked at her calmly. Maybe it's both. But change always starts small, like a repaired toy in a dark room. The queen's throat tightened again. She turned before he could see the emotion in her eyes. Keep them safe, she said, her voice soft but firm. That's an order. And as she walked away, she knew the hidden truth wasn't just about Eli's past. It was about her own heart beginning to wake. Days passed quietly in the palace, but under that calm surface, danger was beginning to grow like a shadow. Rumors had already spread. Whispers that the mighty alien queen was hiding something in the lower halls. The council could feel her distance, her distraction. She no longer barked orders or demanded obedience with fire in her eyes. Something had changed, and they did not like it. Lord Vithar, her chief advisor, gathered a secret meeting in the council chamber. She has grown weak, he said to the others, his voice sharp and cold. The queen who once ruled through fear now hides among servants. A human has her attention, the others murmured in shock. A human? Impossible, one hissed. I have seen it, Vethar snapped. She visits him often. She speaks to him like an equal. That was enough. To them it was a betrayal. The Valoran Empire had never allowed humans any honor, any friendship, any place above servitude. If the queen was truly softening toward one, it meant she was no longer fit to rule. By nightfall, the conspiracy was formed. A few guards, loyal to the council, would search the lower halls and arrest the humans secretly. They would make it look like an accident. And when the queen demanded answers, they would claim ignorance and remind her of her duty to the throne. That same night, the queen stood alone in her private balcony, the cold wind brushing her face. She could feel the unrest without even hearing it. Her instincts, trained by years of war, whispered that danger was near. She turned as her trusted guard, Captain Eris, entered. Your Majesty, some soldiers have been ordered to the lower levels by Lord Vethar's command, he said carefully. But he didn't pass that order through you. The queen's eyes narrowed. Then it is not my command. No, my queen, Eris said softly. It's a trap. Without another word, the queen's wings flared open, catching the moonlight as she strode toward the palace's spiral corridor. If they harm him, she muttered, her voice shaking with quiet rage. In the lower halls, Eli was finishing his cleaning duties. The children were asleep, huddled under warm blankets made from discarded royal cloth. He smiled faintly as he fixed a cracked ceiling light. Almost perfect, he whispered. But before he could finish, he heard heavy footsteps. The air shifted. He turned and saw armored guards blocking the exit. Eli Hart, one growled. By order of the council, you are under arrest for violating royal sanctity. Eli's heart raced. Wait, please, the children. Silence, human, another shouted, raising a weapon. But before they could step closer, a powerful voice thundered through the corridor. Enough! The guards froze. The queen stood at the end of the hall, her eyes glowing with fury, her presence filling the air like a storm. Did I give this order? She demanded. The soldiers dropped to one knee, trembling. My queen, Lord Vethar, I said, did I give this order? She repeated, her voice slicing through the silence. No, your majesty, one whispered. Then leave. Now. They hesitated. One dared to speak, but the council defies me? She roared. The walls seemed to vibrate. If you take one more step toward that human, you will not live to see dawn. The guards fled without another word. The hall fell silent again. Eli stood frozen, staring at her. The children had woken and were watching from behind him. The queen's anger softened as she looked at their frightened faces. She turned back to Eli. Are you hurt? He shook his head. No, but they would have killed me. They won't again, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Not while I breathe. Your Majesty, Eli began carefully, you shouldn't have come. This could cause trouble for you. She looked at him, her eyes shining in the dim light. You think I care about trouble? I think you care about your people, he said quietly. And they won't forgive this. The queen stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint shimmer of her scales. Let them hate me, she whispered. I have ruled through fear for too long. Maybe it's time they learn another way. For a long moment, neither spoke. The faint hum of the palace lights filled the air, and the smell of oil and metal surrounded them. Then she turned toward the children. "You're safe now," she said gently. "But you must stay hidden until I decide what to do." The children nodded, clinging to Eli's legs. Before leaving, the Queen looked back at him one last time. "Tomorrow," she said, "I will face the council." Eli frowned. "They'll accuse you of protecting me." "I know," she said quietly. "And I'll tell them the truth." He looked at her, confused. "Which truth?" "That a queen without compassion is no ruler at all," she replied. And with that, she walked away, her golden robe trailing through the shadows, leaving behind a stunned human, a room full of frightened children, and a palace that would soon be divided between loyalty and rebellion. The morning dawned heavy over Valora Prime. The twin suns rose pale and cold, casting long shadows through the crystal walls of the royal palace. Every corridor hummed with tension, whispers running like fire. The Queen defied the council. Guards stood uneasy at their posts. Servants spoke in hushed voices. Something unseen was shifting in the Empire's heart, something dangerous. The Queen, however, walked through it all with quiet grace. Her robe trailed behind her like liquid gold. Inside her chest, her pulse thundered, but her face revealed nothing. Today she would face the council and decide what kind of ruler she would be. The great chamber was already full when she entered. 12 counselors stood around the circular table, their jeweled armor gleaming. At the head stood Lord Vether, his expression carved from stone. "Your Majesty," he began, his tone falsely respectful. "We were informed of an incident last night. Guards report you interfered with an arrest ordered by this council." The Queen took her seat slowly, her wings folding behind her. "That order was illegal," she said calmly. "And those who gave it acted without my consent." Vethar's eyes narrowed. "It was within our right to act when the Queen's judgment becomes clouded." "Clouded?" she repeated, her voice dangerously soft. "Yes," he said, stepping forward. "You've been hiding a human in the royal palace. Not just any human, but one who defies your laws, harbors alien orphans, and contaminates sacred grounds with his filth." The other counselors murmured in agreement. The Queen leaned back in her chair. "You speak boldly, Lord Vethar. Do you forget to whom you address?" "I speak only what the Empire must hear," he said. "Our people will not follow a ruler who protects a human slave over her own kind." The room fell silent. For a long time the Queen said nothing. Then slowly she stood. Her shadow stretched across the floor, long and sharp. "You say I protect him," she said, her voice low and steady. "You're right." Gasps filled the hall. "I do protect him," she continued, "because he has done what none of you ever dared. While you hoard power and play politics, a simple human showed more honor than this entire chamber combined." Vethar's lip curled. "Honor? He is beneath you." "No," she said firmly, stepping closer to the table. "He is beneath none. When the war ended, he could have taken revenge, but he chose compassion. He saved children our empire abandoned. And you call that weakness?" Her words echoed through the hall. Even the guards outside shifted nervously. Vethar's eyes flashed with fury. "This is treason of spirit, Your Majesty." "You betray your bloodline!" The Queen's tail flicked once like a warning strike. "Then perhaps my bloodline needs cleansing," she hissed. For the first time, fear flashed in Vethar's eyes. The Queen's power, the same power that once shattered armies, was rising again, but this time it burned with something purer. "Your Majesty," another counselor said carefully, "you risk everything for one human." "Why?" The Queen turned, her golden eyes gleaming. "Because he reminded me that ruling through fear is not ruling at all. You call him a servant, yet he has done more for this palace than any of you. He repaired what we threw away, fed who we ignored, and showed me that mercy is not weakness, it is strength." The chamber was silent. Even Vethar couldn't find his voice for a moment. Finally he spat. "If you stand with the human, you stand against us." The Queen's gaze hardened. "Then I stand alone." Her voice cracked like thunder. She drew her royal staff and slammed it onto the ground. The sound vibrated through the crystal floor. "Guards!" The doors opened and Captain Eris entered with soldiers loyal to her. "Arrest Lord Vethar," she ordered, "for conspiracy and defiance of the throne." The council erupted in chaos. "You cannot do this," one shouted. "This is madness." But the Queen's voice was calm, cold, unshaken. "No, this is justice." Vethar glared as 2 guards seized him. "You'll destroy yourself for that human." he hissed. The queen looked him straight in the eyes. If compassion destroys me, then I was never worthy to rule. He was dragged away, shouting curses, his voice fading down the corridor. Silence filled the chamber again. The queen stood tall, her heart heavy but her resolve clear. "Let this day be remembered," she said. "The age of fear ends now." Later, in the quiet of the lower halls, Eli was waiting. When she appeared, his eyes widened. "You did it, didn't you?" "I did," she said, her voice weary but proud. "They called me a traitor. Maybe they're right." Eli shook his head. "No, you just became a queen worth following." For the first time in years, a faint smile touched her lips. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but now the real test begins." The throne room, once a place of fear, now stood quiet and calm. The great banners of the Valoran Empire hung still, their sharp symbols glinting under the morning suns. But for the first time in the Queen's long rule, the air felt alive. It had been 3 days since the Council's revolt. Lord Vethar and his loyalists were gone, stripped of power, exiled to the icy moons. The palace guards, once loyal only to the crown out of fear, now followed the Queen out of respect. Yet beneath all this, something deeper was changing. The Queen stood at the high balcony overlooking the vast city of crystal towers. The streets below were full of her people, aliens of every kind, their scales and skin shimmering under the twin lights. But among them now walked humans too, no longer slaves, no longer outcasts. They worked side by side, uncertain but hopeful. Eli stood behind her, his cleaning uniform replaced by simple royal blue robes. He still didn't quite fit in the grand halls, and he didn't try to. He had refused her offer of a title. "I'm just a janitor," he'd said with a grin. "Only now I guess I clean up bigger messes." The Queen turned toward him now, her expression softer than anyone had ever seen. "The Council feared what you represented," she said quietly. "A world where humans and Velorans share the same space, the same breath. But maybe that's what the universe needs." Eli smiled faintly. "I didn't plan to change anything. I just wanted those kids to sleep without fear." "Sometimes," the Queen said, "that's how empires begin to heal, through the smallest kindness." She looked out again, her golden eyes reflecting the light of her city. "For centuries we ruled through strength. But strength without heart only breeds silence. I see that now." Eli walked closer, standing beside her. "You've done something incredible," he said softly. "You've made them believe again." "Not in me," she corrected gently. "In each other." Below the balcony, a soft sound began to rise, music. The palace choir was singing, but it wasn't one of the old war songs. It was something new, something gentle. The melody carried through the halls like the sound of rain after a storm. The Queen closed her eyes for a moment, feeling its rhythm. When she opened them again, she saw a sight that made her chest ache, children running through the courtyard laughing. Among them were the little alien orphans, now dressed in fine robes, playing freely under the suns. And near them, Captain Aris stood watch, smiling faintly. Even the guards, once stiff and cruel, were kneeling to help the little ones tie their toys together. The Queen turned to Eli. "They are your doing," she said. "They're everyone's now," he replied. "They're the future." She studied him quietly. "You could leave, you know," she said. "You're free now. You could return to Earth, start over." Eli looked down at his hands, rough from years of labor. "Earth isn't the same anymore," he said softly. "And maybe I don't belong there. Not after all this." "You belong wherever your heart chooses," the Queen said, her tone almost tender. He looked at her then, really looked at the strength in her eyes, the quiet sadness behind her smile, the weight of a ruler who had dared to change everything. "Then I'll stay," he said. "Someone needs to make sure you don't turn this place into a royal mess again." The Queen let out a soft laugh, a sound so rare that even the guards outside turned their heads in surprise. "You're brave to tease a queen, human," he grinned. "You're brave to listen to one." For a while they stood in peaceful silence, the suns climbing higher, spreading golden light through the glass walls. Then the Queen spoke again, more serious now. "There will be resistance. Other systems will reject what I'm building here. They'll see mercy as weakness," Eli nodded. "Then we'll show them it's not." The Queen looked at him, her expression unreadable, then extended her hand, a gesture of unity rarely seen in Valoran history. Eli hesitated, then placed his hand in hers. In that moment something ancient broke, Centuries of hatred, distrust, and pride all began to fade under the warmth of that simple gesture. The Queen's voice was quiet but firm. From this day forward, humans are no longer servants of the Velaran Empire. They are allies, partners in rebuilding the future. Eli smiled, a bit overwhelmed. You really mean it? She nodded. You taught me that compassion doesn't weaken a ruler. It strengthens her. And maybe it saved me. He looked at her, his voice soft. You saved yourself, Your Majesty. I just cleaned the floor beneath your feet. The Queen laughed again, free, unguarded, real. Then perhaps you cleaned more than that. Outside, the people of Valora cheered as the Queen raised her hand to the sky. For the first time in generations, the palace was not a symbol of fear, but of hope. And as the twin suns rose higher, casting light over the city, Eli stood beside her, not as a servant, not as a subject, but as a friend who had changed the fate of two worlds. The age of cruelty was over. The age of compassion had begun,